I'll tell you what's been annoying me about like a lot of privacy channels, and I think that we do this too quite a bit, but it's just recently like it's been bothering me that like all of these privacy channels and websites and people out there are like super focused on this libertarian version of privacy where like the individual user has to focus on improving their privacy as much as possible, and there's really not a lot of focus on like getting governments to regulate privacy and that kind of thing, and making like societal change and like getting these companies to respect privacy instead of like teaching people how to defend themselves.
Oh wait, you're serious? Let me laugh even harder.
I'm going to keep this one quick. So Google has settled with California for $93 million over a location privacy allegation. Pretty much, they accused the giant of deceiving users about how they use location data, and this was based on how they were doing things a few years ago. Google has changed how they do things, but they still had to settle for this prior issue. If you want to read more about the details, down in the show notes. But yeah, Google did have to deal with this settlement. Google's ad tech targeted by Dutch class action style privacy damages suit. This is from the Netherlands, which accuses the ad tech giant of breaching European privacy laws, demanding Google stops tracking and profiling consumers, and is also seeking compensation for what it dubs large-scale privacy violations of the EU's data protection regime. The representative action, which has been filed with the Amsterdam District Court, is being brought by two not-for-profits, the Foundation for the Protection of Privacy Interests and the Dutch Consumers Association. More than 82,000 consumers have signed up to join the claim since it was announced back in May, per the pair.
Ireland's DPC set to hit Meta with record privacy fine over US data transfers. So Ireland's Data Protection Commission is set to hand Facebook owner Meta Platforms a record EU privacy fine for failing to heed a top court warning aimed at protecting users' data from the prying eyes of US security services once it's shipped to servers across the Atlantic. The Meta penalty, ahead of the 5th anniversary of the EU's GDPR, will eclipse the previous record, a €746 million fine for Amazon. A data transfer ban has been widely expected and once prompted Meta to threaten a total withdrawal from the EU. The Irish decision will only target Meta's Facebook and won't affect other Meta services like Instagram or any of the other firms that have been transferring data the same way, the people said. The ban is expected to come with a transition period and will most certainly be followed by an appeal from Meta in the Irish courts, by which time new transatlantic data pact the EU has been negotiating with the US might have taken effect. We're going to start off with a quick update. Apple faces their 4th iPhone privacy lawsuit after a Gizmodo story. I gotta quote this article because it's so passive aggressive. I love it. Quote, Apple is famous for breaking records, and apparently it's just as competitive when it comes to getting sued. The company was just hit with a 4th class action lawsuit over accusations of surreptitious iPhone data collection. 3 of those lawsuits were filed in January alone. Impressive, unquote. This is again what I was referencing earlier. Apple, for those who missed it, it's somewhere in your settings that says that, you're opting out of like submitting personal data for advertising, I believe. And basically late last year, some researchers found that they completely ignore that setting and they still submit the data anyways. And it actually includes enough data that it can identify. I think it includes your Apple ID or something. Like it's data that's identifiable. So there's really no excuse for that. And now Apple is getting a ton of lawsuits over it. Speaking of being held accountable, Google reaches a $39.9 million privacy settlement with the state of Washington. The settlement revolves around the claims that Google deceived people into believing they controlled how the search and advertising company collected and used their personal data. In reality, the state said Google was able to collect and profit from the data even if consumers disabled the tracking technology on their smartphones and computers, invading consumers' privacy. A consent decree filed on Wednesday in King County Superior Court requires Google to be more transparent about its tracking practices and provide a more detailed location technologies webpage describing them. In November, Google agreed to pay $391.5 million to resolve similar allegations in 40 US states. Some states, including Washington, chose to sue Google on their own. Arizona reached an $85 million settlement with Google last October in one of those cases.
I'm going with option B.
Like, it's important to have both. Like, if we live in this society currently, people need to know, like, what's going on and, like, what they can do about it. But also, like, it seems to be that's the main focus for everybody. And it's not, like, it's just not good marketing, like, for privacy in general.
Right, like you're screwed unless...
everybody... Right,
kind of marketing.
Pretty much. Yeah, it makes everybody paranoid. It makes people who are interested in privacy, like, out to be crazy.
Well, what would you say to someone who's listening and they're thinking, okay, maybe if the government stepped in, we might see some improvements, but I don't believe in government regulation over something like this? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's just tricky. Like, I guess it depends on what their belief in what the government should be doing is.
Right.
Like, if they don't believe in any sort of, like, government inner or regulation in, like, the free market at all, then I don't know if...
There's nothing to say.
I don't know what I could say about that, because, you know, you can't rely on, like, the capitalistic free market alone to self-regulate itself.
But we don't have anything like that with like the internet side of things. Like you can sign up for any website, they can kind of do whatever they want with your data. So I think that people are really, personally, I think that the way people see this is, oh, they don't want the government to be stepping in and stifling companies or stifling your rights, XYZ, but I actually see this as giving you more rights because this pretty much, like we see things like the California Privacy Act, which give me more rights. I can email a company and ask them to send me all the data they have about me, and that's a legal right that I have. If they don't do it, they're breaking the law. I can also legally request them to delete my data. That's part of like the rights that I've been given, and it's universal for every company. So, like, I think there's a big misconception behind what government regulation has to look like, because this is pretty much allowing companies to offer people a better private and secure experience that keeps people safer and gives them more rights. The individual gets more rights because of this.
Snatch back your brain, zombie. Snatch it back and hold it.